Welcome to The Third Chair, a show about real people, real stories, real life. And here are your hosts for The Third Chair, Peter Grigg and Doug Bazeski.
Well, tonight we have one of our friends on. Doug and I go to a discussion group on books on Friday, and one of the members of that group is here tonight.
Yeah, he's one of the doctors in the group.
Yeah, doctor. Yes. Yeah, Steve Coe. He's a retired engineer, spent a lot of time at Boeing, and has been extensively involved in the work in Burma or Myanmar, teaching business principles to the locals. And he's also here to comment on the sad state of affairs of the Civil War.
Yes, it started last February 2021.
Yeah. So it is our pleasure to have Steve Coe with us. Please welcome him.
Welcome to The Third Chair. We have Steve Coe, former retired, I guess would be the best way to put it, Boeing engineer. One time he studied to be a pastor. We'll talk about that. You do missions for Burma, missionary, and have an understanding on that country, which is in civil war right now.
Yeah.
And first we'll start with your Boeing career. So you worked as a manufacturing engineer, engineering manager, and project manager. Can you let us know about those jobs and the difference?
Sure. Yeah, so actually I hired in originally on the original B-1 bomber program back in 1973.
Oh, wow.
So you know that airplane looks so cool right now? That's a really old airplane. It's been around for quite a long time. That was 1973 when I hired in on that, on the avionics
Almost
program.
the 50th anniversary.
Almost. Well, actually, that was before President Carter, who canceled the production program. So I was on the initial development program on the avionics systems our company had. And so avionics is all the electronic stuff that makes it possible to achieve the mission. So communication, navigation, weapon control, all that kind of stuff. So I was involved in that from the very beginning. Then later on, I actually went down to Edwards Air Force Base on a flight test program for the development program. That was a lot of fun.
Edwards, that's in
California on the Mojave Desert.
Okay.
That's where the Air Force does all their flight test programs of new products. So
because it's kind of out by itself.
It's kind of out there. Yeah. It's it's remote.
So no wild times, huh? Just work.
Now, you're not revealing any secrets for like the government people are going to show up and take you.
You know, they won't take me. They take you. I mean,
they thought about taking me, but they threw me back. So in fact, they gave our producer $10 to take me back.
That was pretty cheap.
Yeah, I know. But they said we're not going to waste government money.
At least they got you off their hands. So, so anyway, I worked on the B-1A at that time, as it's called. And then we'll talk a little later about this. I actually left the company and went to seminary for a while, but I came back on the AWACS program. That's a Airborne Warning and Control System. It's a 707 with a radome on the top.
It's got that big mushroom thing.
Yeah, you see them around here.
So what does this mushroom thing do?
Yeah, well, those things have, they actually are kind of like an airborne air traffic management system. So they have a radar that identifies things they're tracking, and then they have another system on the other side of the radome called the identification friend or foe system. So you can tell good guys from bad guys, which is important.
So the fighters, like the good fighters, can call in, "Hi, Mr. AWACS, I'm a good guy. Are there any bad guys?" And they can tell them.
Mm-hmm. They can send them right to the bad guys.
Hopefully he probably knows he's a good guy before he...
I'm sure there's special codes and all that.
They have transponders on board with both aircraft.
I always thought that the big mushroom thing was just like a restaurant. For the people flying the plane, they'd go up and kind of like a fancy restaurant for dining.
it'd be a little tough to use it for that. I mean, no windows in it for one thing.
Oh, man.
And it's only about maybe 6 feet tall at the center part.
Oh, it's not that big.
It's not that big.
Not that big.
Yeah,
and would you eat MREs or something?
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you might have to lay down at a table to eat. And so,
Moroccan stuff.
but you got a lot of other stuff in there too that kind of gets in the way. And the radar would actually fry your stuff for you. So
That's
and
nice.
it'd fry you as well.
Yeah, well,
So
I
you
guess
don't
that
really
would
want
be
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk
So
about
you were mostly
indigestion. Yeah.
electronics? it
Yeah,
sounds
well,
like?
actually, that's how I started. It was electronic systems and that kind of thing. And then actually, after working on after I came back from seminary, I actually worked on AWACS, and then I went back to the B1 program when President Reagan restarted it, and went back down to Edwards, and that's where I went into management at the time. Edwards, I say Edwards, but it's also not too far from Palmdale, which is also in the Mojave Desert, Lancaster and Palmdale. There's an assembly plant there that's owned by the government, and so that's where we were doing the assembly work, and then out at Edwards we were doing flight test development.
Palmdale, is that Marines?
It's what?
Marines?
No, it's actually a city of Palmdale.
Palmdale.
It's about 75 or 80 miles north of Los Angeles, up in what's
Oh.
called the Antelope Valley.
Nope.
So
Wow.
it's
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
so it's not that far to Edwards from there. It's about 35 miles from there to Edwards. So the two of them are relatively close. And I had people actually at both locations, so I worked between the two. So I worked on a B1B down there until the middle 80s, and then was able to go back up to Seattle, and I worked on a bunch of small developmental kind of programs and that kind of thing, and a bunch of business proposal activities for different activities mostly for the Air Force. So some things like chemical protection equipment for air crews and that kind of thing, and pressure suits for tactical air crews. So you may have seen some things about pressure suits they put on their legs and on their chest, and combine the breathing gases and that kind of stuff so that they don't gray out or black out in the high G stuff.
So is chemical protection different for airplane than down on the ground? Because
Not actually. The principle, of course, is the same. You got to keep the stuff from getting to the guy,
Right.
And so, actually, we one of our suppliers were the people that make spacesuits, and
Wow.
so but
yeah,
you
makes sense.
Yeah, so you got this contained system that the guy wears that filters out any contaminants that might be thrown at him. And that's that's important not just for the pilots and co-pilots, but also for any air crew member, because things like AWACS have 16 or 18 crew behind at all the control panels and that kind of stuff, in addition to the pilots and so on.
Yeah.
So anyway, I worked on a number of development programs and some of the things there that some of the classified stuff, more classified. Ended up working on the F-22 fighter for a couple of years. And then actually...
Did you get to fly in one?
No, unfortunately, I never got to. But we worked on the wing, and so we tried to make sure the wings were going to hold up under the high
You know, that's an important job.
Yeah, well, with the airplane, I think it's kind of all important because I think if something goes wrong in the airplane, you're not flying very long.
That's
No,
right.
yeah.
You become a lawn dart, and
Yeah.
if you're over grass, I mean, it can be a water dart, I guess.
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
for the ocean.
Well, the A-10 Warthog, it can lose half of its wing
yeah.
and still fly.
Yeah.
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 Did you ever work on that plane?
I never worked on A-10. That wasn't a Boeing product. Well, wait a minute. Let me think about this. We actually had a re-wing project for the A-10. You know, some of these old aircraft have been around for a long time, but it doesn't mean they haven't been fixed and upgraded and that kind of stuff. So we actually had a program where we were building new wings for the A-10. And I think it's going through another one of those things
Sure.
at this time. But yeah, so I never got to work on A-10. I got to see him fly at Edwards.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I saw some demos too. They're pretty amazing. They can do this emergency takeoff if they need to attack something right away. Where literally they're it was pretty cool.
It
Yeah.
really is. I the place where I worked at Edwards, they had them on display one time. They had some they were trying to sell them to the Italians or somebody. So they had them on.
Trade them for some
This is after World War
gelato.
II.
Yeah.
So,
How long after?
yeah. So anyway, they had all the ordnance that they could hang on the A-10 on display out on the tarmac. It was really impressive. And they have such a variety of things that they can put on them, and they carry a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
They're really.
And of course, that cannon that comes out of its nose, I mean, that's why they call it the tank killer, just could tear them apart with cannon rounds.
Yeah. Right.
So Chad Hennings, who played for the Dallas Cowboys, flew the Warthog.
Did he fly it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Because he went to the Air Force Academy. And
Okay.
and later on, he played for the Cowboys.
Oh, well, I guess, either way, you're trying to nail the bad guys, right?
That's right. Or who he thinks they're.
Well, most of the graduates, like from the Air Force Academy, football players, are too big for most of the planes.
Yeah.
Well,
You have to be like under 5'10" or something like that.
Right.
Yeah, 5'9", something like that.
170.
He was a big guy, but that's why he did the Warthog, because
but the Warthog had a little more room.
Yeah, because it had more room. But I mean, he was defensive lineman for the Cowboys.
You'd have trouble stuffing me in a Warthog.
You could probably ride in the back of a Z-17, though.
Oh, yeah. I think so.
Did Boeing have the C-130s?
No, that's a Lockheed product. So we had actually, for a period of time, Boeing merged with McDonnell Douglas in the 1990s, mid-90s. And at that point in time, McDonnell Douglas was building the C-17. And so we inherited that program along with McDonnell Douglas. And that turned out to be a really good airplane. It's really been used a ton in recent years in all the deployment stuff.
Sure.
But it's pretty sophisticated, and it can do a lot of stuff that the C-141s used to do, and it can actually do some of the lesser improved airfield stuff that C-130s are designed for.
Oh, wow.
So it's a
pretty
pretty good product.
Sure. I'd like one for Christmas. And on that note, we're going to come right back.
Coffee of the Kentucky-Arizona Walnut Association?
It's kava.
The national coffee of Kawasaki, Japan?
It's kava.
Hiya!
Is it the secret elixir of the surfers in Hawaii?
Or is it the secret island recipe of Kona, Koala, Kauai, or Cola? It's kava. Kava is Polish for coffee. And here at Kava Coffee, we focus on serving a delicious, high-quality cup of coffee in a space where love, coffee, and people mix into the perfect blend.
We value our relationships with our customers and our roasters. Buy locally whenever possible and truly have the homemade touch. Our pastries, syrups, and even our almond milk are made in-house.
So come on in, relax, get some work done. Enjoy the Kava community. Some encouraging words from the Kava Coffee gang.
Kava Coffee.
Be awake.
Welcome back to the third chair. And we're here with Steve Coe telling us about his days in Boeing and working on airplanes. And you were also developed some composite material for the 787. First of all, my first question is kind of naive. What's composite material?
Oh, okay. Okay. So, composite material is structural material. It uses a fiber, typically a carbon fiber or maybe some glass fiber. Fiberglass is composite. Okay.
Oh,
You
okay.
make boats out of because it's got a resin and a fiber. Okay.
Okay.
So for aircraft structure, it's typically going to be something higher strength than fiberglass. So it's going to be a carbon fiber or some other kind of fiber with a higher strength resin also that bonds it all together. So it comes out in layers of fabric, basically, and then you basically lay these stacks together over some kind of a shape and put it into an autoclave. You vacuum bag it, put it in an autoclave, heat it up to 300 degrees or thereabouts, and suck all the air out, and cook it for a while, and out comes the part. Then you have to trim all the excess off and that kind of stuff.
So what's the example that you put on the 787?
Oh, okay. Actually, on the 787, I really wasn't involved in development of composite material for that. What I was involved with there was working with some of the engineers, the best engineers we had, and some university professors to develop training material that could be used to train the other engineers who were, designers or stress analysts or tool designers and so on, how to design with composites as opposed to aluminum. Designing with aluminum is completely different from designing with composite materials. There's a lot of different features, a lot of different factors that play.
So was composite better or cheaper or what?
It's stronger and lighter. Okay.
Stronger. Oh, that's better.
Yep. And so in the long term, the benefit of the composite is that because it's lighter and stronger, you get longer life with lower maintenance cost, and you get a larger payload. So you can get more fuel and more people, more luggage on board, and that kind of thing. So
And people love to get their luggage on board, let me tell you.
Well, yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I've flown a lot.
Yeah. And it's important to be able to get those bags on. And but it's really interesting. Most airlines actually make quite a bit of money hauling cargo on passenger flights.
Oh, besides the passengers.
Baggage. Yeah. So
that's kind of expensive.
Yeah. Well, they actually, a lot of air cargo comes on commercial flights that have passengers up on the upper level. I've heard numbers like 24-25% of the revenue comes from actually the cargo that they handle.
And they probably have a higher profit margin with the cargo, I'm guessing.
Yeah, there's a good profit margin, and it's a cost per pound, or cost per pound, that I think is probably better that way too.
You don't have to go down and feed it.
That's true. You don't have to feed them. You don't have them getting up and walking around. You don't have to tell them sit down, put on your seatbelt, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's actually, this may be hard to believe, but a lot of times the cargo is more dense than the passengers.
Yeah, but how often do you have a service pig with the cargo?
Right. Sometimes there are, but
when the service pig was interviewed, it just said.
Well, we ought to have him on the show.
I can work on that. A short episode.
Really short.
And this might have been one of your last things, because this title's like way long, so I'm going to read it. But you were a corporate program manager of the Boeing Technical Fellowship.
Right.
So what did that consist of?
Yeah. Okay. So Boeing, first of all, the Technical Fellowship Program, those several companies actually have those, and or programs like that, may not call them that, but what they try and do is they try and identify people who are the best of the best in their skill area. So try and find out who these people are, and you then actually recognize them for their expertise, and then you try and get them assigned to the areas where their expertise can be applied to a significant problem. So the technical fellowship program at the Boeing Company had, first of all, the workforce that were candidates or could be candidates for the technical fellowship program. At the time I was there, about 65,000 engineers and scientists. Okay?
Wow.
Out of about 150,000-ish employees worldwide at that time. The technical fellowship program had 3 layers in it. There's associate technical fellow, tech fellow, and senior tech fellow. And out of on those 4 levels, there were approximately, I'm going to say, maybe 4,000 total. But the senior tech fellows was about 65 out of 65,000 that were senior tech fellows. So they were in every area of expertise, from very obscure technical areas to things you might expect in like structures or stress analysis and that kind of stuff. But so the program that I was the manager of, the manager is kind of a loose term. I had a really neat leadership team that I was part of. Most of them were PhDs in some area, physics or engineering or some area. Hypersonic technology was one of the guys, and in other words, his undergraduate degree in physics was from MIT, and then he did his master's and bachelor's at Caltech and that kind of stuff.
So he's kind of a
laser guy.
slouch. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was fun to work with really smart guys.
Yeah, but can they work the electric can opener at home?
After some study. No, these are really great guys. I really enjoyed working with them. And the fellow that I worked for at the end of my career was a retired Air Force 2-star general who had run all the research labs at Wright Pat. And he was a great guy, very smart, and just really just a great guy to work with. So I really enjoyed that. That was a nice way to finish my career. In that organization.
Yeah. Use the word loosely, finish your career, because we're going to talk about all the different places you're volunteering.
That was his earning money career. Now he's volunteering career.
Yeah, his volunteering career. Yeah, I got paid. Speaking of volunteering, I got paid a real chicken for doing circumcisions in the Philippines. Did you ever get anything like that from
I never got a chicken. No.
No, did you get...
I never did circumcisions, though, either.
Well, yeah, this is a high-tech circumcision. Yeah, we use things like anesthesia.
Okay. So were you an anesthesiast, or did you do the whole thing? I mean,
the whole thing.
You were an anesthesiast.
Wow.
Yeah. I was actually a medical student, fourth-year medical student, under supervision.
Yeah, you are multi-skilled then.
Well, and I look good too. So Steve, we're going to talk a little. I'm sorry, Doug.
We're done about airplanes. Although we might get to them again.
We can talk about airplanes for a long, long time.
So we're going to start off talking. I looked at your bio. You have volunteered and done so much stuff all over the place. Yeah. Let's start with. You are a resource faculty of Buckeye Graduate University. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Buckeye. Yeah.
Buckeye.
Yeah.
Buckeye.
Yeah.
Nice. Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. I mean, what was that all about?
Yeah. Okay. So actually, this is after I left Boeing, and I didn't. I retired fairly young. I was almost 57 years old. So I felt like I probably had some more time left on the clock, and I wanted to keep my brain engaged. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just do a doctoral program with this. It's a Christian graduate university. Most everything is pretty much all online, with a few segments here and there where you do some things together with other people. So after I left Boeing, I enrolled in a program there as a doctorate of ministry, actually. Shortly after I finished, or kind of got most of the way through, they set up another degree title that would have been more fitting for mine, called Doctor of Transformational Leadership. But at any rate, Buckeye was, like I said, a small, predominantly online Christian graduate university, offered master's and doctoral programs. So I had a friend that had his wife actually been president of that university for a while, and I had worked with him at my company. And so he convinced me I had to check it out, so I did, and I enrolled, and they accepted me. Believe it or not, that's kind of curious, but they did. And so I started this area of study. What I really wanted to understand as time progressed was an area called theology of work.
Theology of work. Let's hold that thought, and we will talk about theology of work when we come right back. Hi, I'm Peter Grader.
And I'm Doug Biseski, and we are the host of The Third Chair.
We are here at 9 Round Kickboxing in Colorado Springs, shooting a little of what we call B-roll for episodes 1, 5, and 6.
Yes, Peter's about to get his butt kicked while I eat a hamburger. Subscribe to our YouTube page to watch these episodes. They are a sight to behold. And follow us on social media.
We are always looking for guests with a great story.
And that would be everybody, because we all have a story.
If you want to be a guest, send us an email.
And then get yourself down here to 9 Round Kickboxing while you're at it.
Yes, guys, if you're interested in getting fit without getting hit just like Mike does, head over to 9round.com, find one of our 3 locations that's closest to you, and book that free intro workout. We look forward to taking it with you.
Welcome back to The Third Chair. I'm Peter, that's Doug, and we're here with our special guest, Steve Coe. Thanks for coming in tonight, Steve.
Pleasure.
I'm really excited that you actually found the studio. Anyways, we were leaving off on a topic that I find incredibly interesting, and I'd like you to expound on it. The theology of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like, oh, really? There's a theology behind like going to work every day?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, I think an awful lot of people, Christians, non-Christians, everyone, maybe have some misunderstandings about what the point is of work, right? Work is a 4-letter word for a lot of people.
You got that right, brother.
I remember my daughter was like 3, and I said, you gotta put your toys away. And she said, Dad, that's work. And I'm like, well, it's okay to do work. She said, no, I'd rather play.
Right, exactly.
And that's a 4-letter word, too.
Right. So, we have this impression that work is, it's maybe punishment, or maybe it's toilsome. It's difficult. I mean, if you have a choice, you'd rather not do it. That's kind of the impression an awful lot of people have.
Wasn't there sort of that in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, about, after the fall of man, your work is going to become more difficult, and so I think that's part of how the idea of work got a bad rap.
Yeah, it is, and actually, that's sort of a misinterpretation of what the Scripture actually says. Well, it does say that your labor will be toilsome labor. But it wasn't the work that was cursed as a result of the fall. It was the ground that was cursed. Okay? So the fact that the ground was cursed because of the fall of man made their work more difficult. Right? But the work that they were given to do was still something that God had designed.
It was still honorable
and
purposeful.
Because they were working beforehand.
Absolutely. So work actually began before the fall, right? So, if you think about the progression of institutions, if you will, or things, God formed a family out of Adam and Eve. He formed work, really, as He gave them things to do and maintaining a garden and extending the garden and doing things that were purposeful, right? And so it really is best viewed as a stewardship responsibility. Okay, God has blessed us with all that there is, right? And He's given us some abilities to use, right? He's given us a brain, He's given us some skills. He's given us some giftedness, something that we really, really enjoy doing. Okay, any of us do that, and it's in various areas of work. And so the idea is that really our work it can be actually it can be an act of worship. If we do it if we're doing what God has created us for, and if we're doing it in a way that honors Him, recognizes that we are stewards of what He's created and entrusted to us, then we're working for the most perfect boss there could ever be, right? And He's given us everything we need to do it successfully. Okay? And
Well, yeah, but I think though, I'll be the devil's advocate here, just so you can
You
respond.
do that pretty well.
Yeah, I do, but no horns tonight. Yeah, I think sometimes people don't like that sort of idea because perhaps the work they're stuck with they really don't like. It may not be purposeful. It may be for whatever reason just a drag. And so what do you think about that? I mean, I've thought about that. What do you think?
Yeah, there are various reasons why people find their work to be less than inspiring, or less than pleasing to them, and so on. Sometimes it's because they are just literally in the wrong area. They're doing the wrong thing. They're not doing what they're really gifted for. And it might be as a result of some guidance that they had from even early childhood. They might have, maybe Uncle Fred might have kind of said, you'd be a really good engineer. You ought to study engineering. You ought to go and become an electrical engineer. Because you really like things that make sparks and all that kind of stuff. But maybe I look at that and I say, okay, Uncle Fred, I really respect you. That sounds pretty exciting. I'd love to do that kind of thing. But maybe my giftedness is not actually in being an electrical engineer. Maybe I'm gifted to be a musician.
An opera singer.
Yeah.
And your last name is Pavarotti.
Yeah. It could be, So, but you end up being drawn into an area of labor, if you will, that maybe it pays well, and maybe you have, gotten through the coursework necessary to get you a job in that area somehow. And maybe you find though that it's just not really that fulfilling, right? But you get locked in because, once you get out of school, you get into a job, you buy a house, you get married, you buy cars, you got kids, and you got maybe some debt from college. A few people have some
Student
of that.
loans,
So you have some bills that you have to pay. So now when you say, at your maybe age 30, you say, I'm just not liking this very much. I'd really rather go sing in an opera, And maybe you've been taking voice lessons or something, and maybe you're pretty darn good at it. But,
the inertia to change is too much.
Yeah, exactly. You have to overcome all those things that keep you in that job that pays you that money so you can take care of the bills and the family.
Sometimes that's just the provision of health care. People get locked in just to be able to have health insurance.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of reasons like that. So those are some of the reasons sometimes that people get into that situation. Other places, in a lot of other countries, my dad was a farmer, my grandfather was a farmer, my great-grandfather was a farmer.
Yeah.
I'm going to be a farmer. There's just
right.
what else?
Probably most of modern history, that was the way it was.
Yeah, in fact, actually, it's probably still the case in probably 80% of the world.
Yeah, I mean, even the idea of Jesus saying, okay, I want you to now go and become missionaries, essentially, was probably pretty radical, because it's like, I'm a fisherman, my brother's fish, that's pretty, to change profession was more common.
But I can't leave my father mending the nets, of the boat. That's my responsibility.
And that's why you talked about, separating families and stuff like that, because that's what they did. They had He left the boats and the...
Exactly.
Now you sort of went through this personally. I mean, you were an engineer. I don't know why people become engineers or auditors for that matter. And
well, you become an auditor because you don't want to be an engineer. Because it's too
you want to check.
I visited the engineer college, and the guy took us on a 3-hour tour.
Yeah.
Was his name Dr. Gilligan?
He was really good, and he showed me all this stuff, and I said, I don't want to be an engineer. I mean, but that was what I got out of it. Yeah.
Because that was actually a good lesson for you.
Yeah.
Because early on, before you went through all that schooling, you realized that's not what you really wanted to do.
Right.
That's good. That's good.
You know, but you, after becoming an engineer and being happy with it, felt like maybe you were supposed to become a pastor. And you pursued that, and what happened?
Yeah, so that was back in the early 70s, 75, 76.
Oh, that wasn't popular then.
Oh,
not like it is now,
yeah.
I'm sure it's so popular that they're in the middle of every parade.
Here come the pastors.
But it was also a time, especially in evangelical Christian church, where if you were going to be doing God's will, what were you going to do?
Oh, well, the only thing acceptable is a missionary or...
Missionary, pastor, evangelist.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Maybe you could be a doctor if you were going to be a missionary doctor.
But don't you make that filthy lucre here in town?
That's right. That's right. You know, so that was kind of the prevailing mentality in the church at the time, was that God's work involved doing things that were part of the church. You know, doing things that were spiritual. You know? And so, I was I was working in California at the time. We were going to a small church, and I was teaching Sunday school class for adults and on the elder board and all that kind of stuff. And people started saying, why are you working on weapons of mass destruction when you should be saving lives?
You composite material maker.
Oh, that's before composite.
We're going to find out the answer when we come back.
We'll get back to our guest in just a moment. But
do you have a story to tell?
Would you, yes you, like to be a guest on the third chair?
Send us an email and tell us about yourself and your story.
And please follow us on social media.
Now back to the episode.
Welcome back to the third chair. This is Peter. That is Doug. This is Steve Coe, our guest. We were talking at the break about the whole idea of sometimes people will go into a profession and then realize that they've made an error. And so let's talk about that a little bit. What happened to you? How did you figure out that you needed to make a different decision? And what advice do you have people as they try and figure out what to do?
Yeah. So, as we were talking before the break, my decision to leave my company and the engineering job that I had and go to seminary was the result of my being influenced by people around me that were in the church that had my best interest at heart and so on, seeing me as someone that really could be effective as a pastor in the church. And listening to that and being a Christian, being committed to doing what I believe God wanted me to do, said, okay, I'll do that. So we packed up our 3-month-old daughter and moved to Minnesota in December.
Minnesota.
In December.
Yeah, it was
the first sign that maybe there was trouble ahead.
Or commitment. It would have been commitment.
What was the part of Minnesota did you move to?
Minneapolis, St. Paul area.
Well, that's better than the Norris.
Oh yeah.
I
It
mean,
wasn't International Falls or Bemidji or any place like that. Yeah, but it's still. It was 35 below when we moved our stuff in. Now, my mother had said...
It was not the best day to move.
No, it was not the best day for that. But my mother had the wisdom to say, your daughter and wife are not going to travel with you in that U-Haul truck across Montana and North Dakota. We stayed in Fargo one night. In this kind of weather, they're going to stay here. Your dad's going to fly back. I mean, he's going to go with you in a truck, and he'll fly back. She'll fly. The wife and daughter will go on the plane. So anyway, yeah, it was cold when we got there, but that was not a hindrance. I like challenges, so it was not a big deal. But anyway, so I ended up in Minnesota at Bethel Seminary. I'm not sure if I was supposed to name that, but I did.
Bleep.
We talked about our guests, or one of our previous guests, that his old college in Cincinnati, and it closed down now and everything. So
And we need
Bethel
that.
Seminary.
That's obviously not the University of Cincinnati that has a good football team.
No, but he said the problem was that his college went to football.
The Bible college decided to have a football team. Yeah, trouble.
Okay. So anyway, I ended up in Minnesota at the seminary, and we had enough money in the bank from employment and selling a home in California and that kind of stuff for me to go ahead and be able to do 2 semesters, 2 terms, 2 quarters actually, without having to work in addition. So I was taking all kinds of courses, really enjoying what I was doing, learning stuff. It was really cool. But I knew that I was not going to be able to support the family if I didn't get a job and go to school. So in the summer, I got a job at a factory, actually, and I just worked as a factory laborer, just grinding welds and that kind of stuff, and doing labor work. Nobody hired me as an engineer because I told them I was a student, I wasn't going to stay forever. So the engineering profession was not an option for me at that point.
Wow.
So I worked in the factory, and actually the working second shift, coming home at 12:30, 1 o'clock, and getting up and going to school, and then studying somewhere in there, started to wear me down a little bit. And actually, the thing that really happened, I'll make this short, the third term of my second year there, I had this class called Introduction to Preaching. Now, giving presentations and stuff never really bothered me. I had no trouble with that kind of stuff, and even if it were to executives or whatever, I still fairly on. But when it came to the Introduction to Preaching course, it seemed different to me. In fact, there came a day where students had to do a 5-minute sermon for about 5 or 6 of their fellow students and the professor. And if you were to ask my wife today when she has seen me look the most nervous, literally kind of green in the face, she would tell you that was it. Getting up and doing that 5-minute sermon. And it just terrorized me to think
You're not alone. I've heard this story before. Yeah.
So, if I'd taken Introduction to Preaching in my first term, it would have been a much shorter time in seminary.
I wasted a whole year and a half. I didn't take it till later.
Yeah, I did 3 days of seminary.
It would have been a lot quicker. But
cheaper too.
That's something that it really just hit me that this is not. I don't think this is it. And so talked to my wife about that, and she was relieved. I think she didn't really want to be a pastor's wife. I mean, she was fine. She was going to do it if I was going to be a pastor. But she said,
good wife.
I don't sing. I don't play the piano. What's a pastor's wife going to do? Anyway, so that's what everybody expects pastor's wife, at least back in then. And so anyway, I thought, I think I'll call a guy I know back at my company and see if they might be looking for guys to come back to work. And so I did that, and he was incredibly excited by the idea that I was interested in coming back to work for him. And so, actually, I hadn't worked for him. I'd just known him on another program. And it was a large company we're talking about. It took him 2 days to have a job offer in my hands. So it was pretty quick. And to just really kind of seal it as being the right decision, the following Monday, my wife took a phone call from another guy who had heard that I was thinking about coming back and wanted to know if it was true.
Those rumors spread fast.
It did.
And that was before the internet, you know.
Yeah, that's right. It was. It was back. I mean, you still had cords on the phones on the desk.
And the little dialy thing.
Yeah,
or was
mine had
there
push
buttons by
Mine
then?
had buttons by then.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I'm not sure. But at any rate, so that just kind of confirmed that, okay, I'm not really supposed to be a pastor. I'm supposed to go ahead and go back and be something.
But this raises a really good point. Yeah. You know, it's good that you listened to people around you that you thought were wise.
Yep.
But there's got to be a balance. I mean, you know, good advisors are valuable, but is that the whole story for trying to figure out what to do in life?
Yeah. No, you know.
But, you know, it's hard. Where should you draw the line on some of this stuff? I mean, that's the really hard part.
It is.
You know.
It is.
Yeah, I mean,
prayer helps sometimes because it gives you a different. You can walk away from everything and you're praying, and sometimes God talks to you, or sometimes you.
Yep.
Or sometimes you just have to feel the terror. Yeah. You know, and I don't know. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, someone should have stopped you from being an auditor, but
somebody's done it.
You would have been happier playing the piano.
Yeah, if I could play the piano. I am tone deaf, so I have no rhythm, and
yeah, you may not have really.
And I'm kind of
enjoying...
clumsy, so otherwise I probably would have been a great pianist.
So did you face these same people that so supported you, or at least said, you know, you ought to do this? Or did you go back to them, or did you?
No, because they were in California, and I went back to work in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
And so actually, but you know, so here's the way I thought about this and look back on it. I had that real strong sense that I should maybe be a pastor. Okay, that I should be a pastor. I was pretty convinced. But my idea of what a pastor does is kind of, preaching wasn't really the first thing on my list. I'm the kind of guy that likes to do stuff. So I envisioned myself, you know, rewiring the church or putting a roof on or fixing windows and that kind of stuff. And he's got to preach on Sunday kind of thing. So I had sort of the wrong idea of what that was going to be. But here's the thing that really kind of, in the years back, looking back on it, I think, if I had never gone to seminary and never checked to see if that's really what I should be doing, I would have that lingering question in my mind.
Right.
Should I have done that? You know, or did I just sell out? You know, to the higher paying position, to the position in a company, large, prestigious company. Did I sell out, or did I really give it a good shot? And the way I look at that is that sometimes God gives you an opportunity to try something, even though He knows that that's not really what you're supposed to do. But He says, go ahead and give it a shot. Okay? And you'll see after time, you'll be convinced that's not really what you want. That's not really where you should be.
And that, it sounds like that time, though, still shaped you.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I mean, you've been involved with missions and Burma or Myanmar.
You got it pretty close.
Yeah. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Grigg, a life and recovery coach with Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching. I've had the pleasure and privilege of helping people for over 25 years. I want to hear your story, support and encourage you while we partner together to help you reach your goals. I can help you. I am certain I can help you. I can be your guide, role model, resource person, and help you get results. What's my coaching frameworks? I'm an eclectic coach drawing from a variety of disciplines and frameworks with evidence-based proven methods. What would you like to work on? Some popular areas are goal setting and attainment, building and maintaining motivation, finding purpose, personal development, recovery from drug and alcohol addiction problems, health and wellness, life planning, athletic and creative artist performance enhancement, maybe something else. Just ask me. I would love to help you. You can find my services on Fiverr.com. Welcome back to the third chair. I'm Peter, that's Doug, and we're here with Steve Coe. And we're going to change direction here. Steve, you've been a missionary to Burma, or Myanmar is the more, I don't know if it's a more modern name or what, but there is a civil war going on there. And we're going to talk about that because it's not getting a lot of press in the news and it's very serious. And so tell us a little bit about the situation in Myanmar.
Yeah, okay. First of all, a lot of people may not even know where it's at. I didn't know where it was at until I met a guy that was from there. So Myanmar is at the top end of the Bay of Bengal, and it's between India and Southwest China primarily, and it's got a border on Thailand as well. It was a British colony up until 1948, when the British were invited to leave, and
just like India.
And actually, it had quasi-functioning kind of pseudo government up until the 1960s, when there was a military coup, and so the military took over government totally in 62, I think it was, or 63. And they were pretty harsh guys and very skillful in doing bad things. So anyway, there have been times that, let me say this, that the country is about the size of Texas. It's got about 54-ish million people now. The vast majority of them are Buddhist. In fact, the largest Buddhist pagoda is Shwedagon Pagoda in what was called Rangoon. It's now called Yangon. But so it's predominantly a Buddhist country. But missionaries came there in the early 1800s and in this lower part of Burma. But in the upper part, they got there in the later 1800s. So anyway, to try and keep this a little bit tighter, there's been a lot of ethnic tension in Myanmar all the ways. Okay, but the government that was in place in 2005, 6, 7, 8, which was all military led, decided they needed to look more like a democracy in order to participate in the world economic system. So they designed a constitution. They showed it to the people in April, and it got a 97% approval rating in May. So, the very next month, it was everything was cool. And that constitution provided for some elections to happen, but it also provided for the military to have an active role in the government of the country. So even though they got a parliament, upper lower house, 670 some seats, 25% of the seats are filled by active duty military officers that are appointed. So, and you got to have 75% of the vote to change constitution. So you know where that's going. And some of the people who are elected outside of the military people actually had strong ties to the military anyway. So it wasn't really going to change. But it started to give people a taste of what democracy was like. So they've had elections in 2015, and then they also had one in 2020, about the same time as we did, 2020, November. And the military had been losing influence. They still had their 25%, but the other seats that they held were being eaten away by what was called the National Democracy League, NLD, National League for Democracy, led by a lady named Aung San Suu Kyi, who became kind of the voice of the democracy movement in Burma. And anyway, they lost a lot of seats in that election. They had the authority under the Constitution they had written in 2008 to take over government if they thought that the Union was at risk of coming apart. They said, we've lost too much power in our parliament. We think that we can say the country's at risk of coming apart, so we're going to take over the government again. They did that on February 1st of this year. And that resulted in just an incredible backlash from a lot of people. This is not the first time that they've pushed back against the military, but this one has had more, has been sustained longer, has had much deeper involvement of more of the ethnic groups. There are 135 ethnic groups in the country, and the predominant one is the Bamar, that are 65% of the population. They're mostly Buddhist. They even participated this time in the backlash against the government.
And so in the process of participating in a backlash, the junta has the military junta has doubled down
Yes.
with atrocities.
Yes, several times.
And we're gonna talk about that next show. Steve is gonna come back next week, and so how can people find out if they want to get involved in the situation that's going on?
Yeah, so actually there is some. If you search for it online, there's a fellow named Dr. Sasa, S-A-S-A, who was the UN representative that was appointed by the government that had been elected, and he has spoken out a lot about the atrocities being committed by the military, because the military is not the official government. They've just taken control. Okay, so they haven't been recognized by, well, maybe they've been recognized by a couple of important members of the UN Security Council as being the governing force, but they are not a legitimate government. The people that were displaced from the parliament have formed what they call a national unity government, and Dr. Sasa is their representative at the UN, and there's been some games played lately because the military wants to put in their person there at the UN, and he's still actually there as well. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So what we're going to do, we'll see if we can find a contact information for that gentleman or his organization.
Sure.
And then we're going to talk about the situation in Myanmar when we come back next week. So until then, please like, share, subscribe, and hit the notification icon. And we will see you next time. Good night from 2 Men and a Duck Entertainment and the Third Chair.
This has been the Third Chair. Want to be a guest? Want to sponsor our show? Send us an email. Please subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media.